Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what honestly has to be one of the most meteoric, unbelievable, and ultimately tragic life stories in the entire history of the Ottoman Empire. We're talking about Pargalı Ibrahim Pasha. I mean, we're looking at a man who started with absolutely nothing, literally rose to become the second most powerful person in a massive, sprawling empire, and then lost it all in a single night. So how exactly does someone navigate that kind of extreme ascent? And what are the fatal missteps that lead to such a dramatic, catastrophic fall? Well, let's find out.
To really understand Ibrahim Pasha, you just need to wrap your head around two contrasting titles. In Ottoman history, he's famously remembered by two very specific, totally conflicting words. First, there's Makbul, which translates to the favored, or the absolute beloved of the Sultan. But then, history also remembers him as Maktul, which means the executed. And that stark contrast right there establishes the central tragic paradox of his entire life. How does the ultimate insider, the absolute favorite of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, transform into a victim of the very state he helped build? It's a fascinating psychological and political puzzle. Let's see how this all builds, starting right from the beginning.
Section 1. Origins and the making of a statesman.
So, born around 1493 into a humble Christian family in the coastal town of Parga, Ibrahim was actually brought into the Ottoman palace through the devshirme system. That was the Ottoman practice of conscripting young Christian boys. But once he got there, he wasn't just trained as your run-of-the-mill soldier, oh no. He was sent to the prestigious Enderun Academy, which was essentially the elite leadership factory of the Ottoman Empire. And he absolutely thrived. We're talking about a guy who mastered 5 languages: Arabic, Persian, Italian, Greek, and Turkish. He dove deep into military strategy and high-stakes diplomacy. But he also had this incredible soul of an artist, you know? He trained in literature, poetry, and even played a stringed instrument similar to a violin. He was, by all definitions, a brilliant multilingual intellectual whose sharp memory and total cultural fluency immediately set him apart from the crowd.
Now, what's incredibly fascinating about this dynamic is how it highlights a total defiance of traditional Ottoman protocol. The real turning point in Ibrahim's life was meeting Shahzada, or Prince, Suleiman. These two young men, both highly intellectual, both massive lovers of poetry, just clicked. They formed an immediate, unbreakable bond. But here's the catch. Their friendship broke literally all the rules. They shared a room, they ate their meals together, and they engaged in these long late-night conversations. In the highly stratified, incredibly formal world of the Ottoman court, this brother-like intimacy between a royal prince and a servant was just unheard of. It was a bond of absolute trust, but as we'll see, it also sowed the earliest seeds of some pretty intense jealousy among the other courtiers.
When Suleiman officially ascended to the throne, Ibrahim's rise was just dizzying. It was marked by these rapid, completely unprecedented milestones. In 1521, he plays a key role in the Belgrade campaign. Then, boom, in 1523, a massive shockwave hits the Ottoman bureaucracy. Suleiman totally bypasses older, highly experienced, battle-hardened pashas to appoint young Ibrahim as Grand Vizier. It was a completely unprecedented move. By 1526, he's out there orchestrating the massive Battle of Mohawks, and by 1533, he's securing major diplomatic victories against Austria. He didn't just climb the corporate ladder, he was basically teleported to the top by the Sultan's absolute backing. But to be fair to Ibrahim, he really did have to prove he actually deserved that immense trust.
Section 2. The commander, the diplomat, the architect.
You see, Ibrahim Pasha wasn't just some favorite who sat comfortably in the capital sipping coffee. He was out in the field, fundamentally shaping the boundaries and the laws of the empire. He acted as prime minister, defense minister, and foreign minister literally all rolled into one. And his impact out there can be summarized by a single astonishing number: 2. During the 1526 Battle of Mohawks, Ibrahim Pasha's brilliant logistics, troop deployment, and strategic planning paid off in a spectacular way. The powerful Hungarian army was entirely crushed in just about 2 hours. 2 hours, I mean, that is wild. This incredibly brief, decisive victory threw open the doors of Central Europe to the Ottomans and essentially ended the Kingdom of Hungary as a standalone power. As a commander, Ibrahim absolutely validated Suleiman's faith in him.
But he wasn't just a military conqueror, he was a brilliant administrator too. When rebellions and corruption started threatening the incredibly vital and wealthy province of Egypt, Ibrahim was the guy sent in to fix it. And he took a remarkably systematic approach. He didn't just go in and suppress the revolt with violence. Instead, he entirely restructured the tax system to actually make it fair and efficient. He established a new military framework, he reformed the local administration, and most importantly, he drafted a comprehensive kanunname, a formal law code that completely stabilized Egypt and bound it firmly to the Ottoman Empire for generations. He was literally building the machinery of the state.
And then, of course, there was his diplomacy. Because of his multicultural roots in Parga and that elite Enderan education, Ibrahim understood the West way better than anyone else in the Ottoman court. He engineered a massive geopolitical shift. Using his cultural fluency, he bridged a huge religious gap to orchestrate a shocking, completely unprecedented alliance between the Muslim Ottoman Empire and the Christian Kingdom of France. And this was aimed directly at the dominant Habsburgs. It was an absolute masterstroke. It terrified the Habsburgs and shaped European politics for centuries to come. In fact, European diplomats were so in awe of him, they actually began referring to him as Magnificent Ibrahim.
Section 3. Hubris and the Fall.
But you know what they say, the higher you climb, the thinner the air gets. Ibrahim's extraordinary successes, his unprecedented wealth, and the sheer overwhelming magnitude of his authority began to toxically alter his ego. The calm, grounded intellectual we saw earlier began slipping into some pretty dangerous arrogance. While Europeans praising him as magnificent was great for foreign policy, back home, yeah, that was a massive political liability. Rumors started swirling that Ibrahim was actually using titles like Saraskar Sultan during his campaigns. Now, Saraskar means commander-in-chief, which was totally fine, but attaching Sultan to it? No way. In the Ottoman court, that is literally playing with fire. Whether he formally claimed the title himself or just allowed others to flatter him with it, this perceived arrogance triggered immense jealousy, deep suspicion, and a whole lot of anger among the conservative factions back in the capital.
And, well, his lifestyle didn't exactly help quiet those rumors down. Ibrahim amassed an unbelievable fortune. He built a palace right in the heart of Istanbul that rivaled the Sultan's own residence in its breathtaking grandeur. Filled with European art, fine fabric, statues, it became an entire hub of power all on its own. You can actually still see it today. It houses the Turkish and Islamic Arts Museum. But at the time, many in the Ottoman establishment began to view this magnificent structure and its owner not as a servant of the empire, but as a deeply threatening state within a state. He was just becoming too big.
And when you get that big, well, enemies start aligning against you. Powerful forces were quietly, strategically uniting for his downfall. First, you have hurremsultan, Suleiman's incredibly influential wife. She and Ibrahim were locked in this fierce, silent battle over succession. Ibrahim supported Suleiman's eldest son, Shahzadeh Mustafa, while Hurrem, understandably, wanted her own sons on the throne. Then you have ambitious figures like Rustam Pasha, along with the ulama, the religious scholars, and rival pashas who deeply resented his rapid rise and his very European leanings. But honestly, his most dangerous enemy was his own hubris. His growing ego completely blinded him to the very real danger that these combined forces represented.
Ultimately, it all came down to the absolute golden rule of the Ottoman system. No one, and I mean no one, can possess absolute power except the Sultan. It is the absolute core survival principle of the entire dynasty. And Ibrahim Pasha had forgotten, or perhaps willfully chosen to ignore, this fundamental law. He had gathered so much wealth, so much military control, and so much diplomatic influence that he inadvertently violated the very mechanics of Ottoman rule. Even his childhood friend Suleiman, feeling the intense pressure from the court and perhaps his own growing unease, realized that a second son simply could not share the sky. His downfall wasn't just a personal betrayal. Structurally, it was basically inevitable.
Which brings us to a really chilling date, March 15, 1536. It was Ramadan. Ibrahim was invited over to Topkapi Palace to share an iftar, the evening fast-breaking meal, with his lifelong friend, Sultan Suleiman. They ate together, they probably reminisced about their youth in Edirne, completely adhering to that brotherly bond they had shared for decades. Just a totally normal evening. But after the meal, as Ibrahim retired to his room in the palace to sleep, the Sultan's deaf-mute executioners entered. And just like that, the second most powerful man in the world was strangled in the dark.
In a final, absolutely stark contrast to his magnificent life, Pargalı Ibrahim Pasha was buried secretly in an unmarked grave somewhere in the Galata district. There was no grand tomb, no monuments. The state literally tried to erase his memory overnight. And so we leave you with this lingering thought. Did his unprecedented power ultimately poison his mind with hubris, or was he simply the inevitable victim of a rigid system that fundamentally could not and would not tolerate a second son? It's a massive debate that historians are still having today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the history behind the power.